Kieran, PSR is obviously going to dominate for a while. There's conversations in the Premier League around a new model because, and we spoke on this before on the Or to Know Better podcast, but it was like, it feels like PSR sanctions means the PSR is starting to work correctly, but now everybody's got a problem with it. But it also seems to kind of frozen the elite exactly where they were, and it's kind of stopping anybody else getting in there. Aston Villa being a prime example, finally get into Champions League and have to sell some of their best players immediately then just to balance the books. There's talk of a change, and where do you see this being in the next 4 or 5 years in terms of a financial model in the Premier League and Championship?
I think there will be a change as far as the calculations are concerned, but as far as the impact on being able to be a club that is aspirational, to be a club that wants to appreciate in terms of its annual position in the Premier League or wherever, I don't see much of a change. And the reason for that is that if we take a look at the proposed rules, which are effectively that they're going to mirror the rules of UEFA. And if we keep it relatively simple, let's assume that you can spend 70% of your revenue from your 3 main sources: ticket sales, commercial, TV, and player sale profit. So you work out that total. The way it's going to work in the Premier League is that if you're playing in Europe, you can spend 70% of that on player wages, what we call transfer fee amortization, player write-downs, and agents' fees. If you're not in Europe, you can spend 85%. So if we take 2 clubs at random, let's take first of all Manchester City. Manchester City, and let's not go down the avenue as to, well, is that money legit or what? Yeah, let's just take a look at it purely from a spreadsheet point of view. Manchester City generated £700 million of revenue, and I mean not even including player sales. And they had some, Manchester City are much smarter at selling players than anybody gives them credit for, by the way. So they've got 700 million. You say, well, what's 70% of that? It's 490 million. So, okay, so they can spend 490 million on players, transfer fees, wages, blah, blah, blah. If you're Newcastle United, they probably generated 250 million last year. Now they want to get more, and they can spend, let's just take 75%. Let's assume that they're in Europe. 70% of 250 million is 175 million. So they are starting the season at a 300 million pound disadvantage to Manchester City. So how do you get up? People say, well, it'll take time. The rules are there to allow clubs. That's nonsense. Because if you've got a big 6 who are somewhere between probably 150 to 300 million pounds ahead of you at the start of each season, you can't break into that big 6. Yeah. So that's where my reservations kick in. UEFA have given in. They've given concession after concession after concession to something called the ECA, the European Club Association. Now, the ECA says, well, hold on, we've got 200, 250 members, and they have, but just count how many of those members have shares who can actually vote. Yeah. So you can't be a diner unless you're allowed to dine. It's always been my view. And effectively, the smaller clubs in Europe, yes, they're allowed in the restaurant, but they just have to go and sit around and watch everybody else eat. And I'm sorry for all these metaphors.
Sit at the bar while you're waiting on a table, which may never come.
Right, yes. So the reason why UEFA has given away all these concessions is because it still fears some form of breakaway competition. So it's the elephant in the room. It's the monster that won't die. Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street. It just keeps coming back in different shapes, or the threat of it keeps coming back. And in order to keep the bigger clubs happy, UEFA says we'll try to create a situation, we'll try to create competitions which will ensure that you've got an advantage. If you take Manchester United, take the clubs that have qualified for the Champions League, and Leeds United this season realistically, they're going to have what, £34 million in parachute payments. They'll get another, say, 5 million from the EFL for the TV deal, so that's 40. They'll get commercial income, I would imagine, of at least 30 million, and then they'll get gate receipts, which 25 to 30. So they'll be, by championship standards, they'll be getting 80 to 90 million pounds. You then look at what you've got for qualifying for the Champions League. You're now guaranteed 4 home matches. Manchester United make £5 million in ticket sales on each home match, so they're going to get £20 million from the European matches. You get an entry fee for the Champions League of 30 million, and then what people don't realise is that the UEFA coefficients kick in, and they rank all of the 36 teams that are in the Champions League and are in the UEFA conference. And in the Champions League, you get £1 million per place. So if you're the worst team in Europe qualifying for Europe, you'll get an extra 1 million. If you're Real Madrid or Manchester, well, it will be Real Madrid, you start off with £36 million. That's more money than Leeds United are going to generate from commercial income before a ball is kicked.
Yeah.
So it just preserves the existing status quo, and that is on the back of a bigger European competition, which, to my knowledge, no fan has asked for.
Or once, when it was suggested, there was fan outrage about it as well. It's a strange one, Kieran, because on paper, and having listened to what you've said, it would seem that if you're a Premier League club that are not in that top 6, this is a bad deal, as was the previous deals. They're not good deals. But yet you see Premier League clubs repeatedly voting in favour of these, and you wonder, if I'm a mid to lower table club, surely I would be against this and looking for a deal that would be better in place. But it kind of sounds like European clubs are in an abusive relationship, or UEFA are in an abusive relationship with a handful of clubs who just threaten to leave every time they don't get what they want. Why would any club vote in favour of a deal like this if you're not top 6?
Because they see it as least bad. I'm not being disrespectful to my club or to Bournemouth or to Palace or to Wolves or to Fulham. I don't know anybody that's going to spend £100 million a year giving them money to go and play football, with the exception of Sky.
Yeah.
So what else can they do? One of the big fears, I think, amongst those smaller clubs is that if they kick up too much of a fuss, then the bigger clubs will effectively take their ball home and say, right, we're going to pull out of the Sky deal, and what we're now going to do is that we're going to sell our own TV rights direct to the fan. And I've got very little time for glory-seeking fans. I live in Sussex. I see a variety of shirts on clubs, and I think we wouldn't even have to find Manchester on a map, Paul. And I lived in Manchester for 40 years, and I've worked in Liverpool for 30. And the local fans, just like the local fans of any club, huge respect for football's as much to do with pain as it is to do with glory. But you do have that sense of identity with your club. That's not the case with a lot of the tourist fans. But equally, Manchester United can earn a fortune more if they did sell their rights direct to fans, because they've got fans on all 5 continents. They've got fan clubs in practically every country in the world, and they'll pay £10, £15, £20 a month, or whatever it's going to be. And when you start to add up the numbers, you realise just how beneficial that could be.